Hello, Jing Chuan.
Hi, James. How are you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Great.
We're glad to see you again.
Same.
Yep. So actually, tonight is the Beijing Olympic Games, the ceremony. Yeah, the start of the Beijing Winter Olympic game. Yeah, there's a small.
Did it start
the start
already
of the
or later?
2022 Olympic Games. Just
Okay.
tonight. Yeah, just the Beijing time, 8 a.m. It just start.
Okay, just now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna look. Hopefully, it's still on TV when I get home.
Yes. So just the game will be start. Just the ceremony just started.
Ceremony finished. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. And
hello.
Right in time for. Hey, Charles.
Hi. How are you doing, Charles?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, we're all good. Thanks. We're just saying that the Winter Olympics is starting right now, and I guess it was deliberately chosen to be at the New Year's as New Year arrived in China.
Ah, very clever.
Yeah, it's a good way to get some extra guests in the stadium if everyone's on holiday.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, is that Jan there?
Yeah, that's me. Today from the office.
Okay. Nice to see you again. You couldn't quite recognize you with this tiny video feed I'm getting. But, yeah. Have you all gone back to normal working in the office routine where you are, Jan, or is there still work from home?
No, I'm in the office in a meeting room called Python, and I'm going to work almost every day now, but it's rapidly changing now because Omicron. So, for example, next week I will be most likely working from home because my son is in quarantine, starting from today. So, but hopefully, because Omicron is so fast, hopefully it will change in a very near future, and we will be working normally and living our lives normally again.
We can hope.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's reason for, if it's like South Africa, it comes and goes very quickly without much impact at all.
All right. James, do we have an agenda for today, or are we hey,
I think that Mohamed is going to do a demo for us. I think I remember Louis saying something like that. Is that right, Mohamed? Yeah. Mohamed, have I got that right?
Are you able to hear me out? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to show a demo, a small demo. With,
okay, great, cool. Okay, so we got that. That'll be very welcome. And there's some of the usual kind of announcements. Might as well so mention them. I'm in the throes of fighting with the Maven release plugin, which seems to have changed some subtle and evil way since Fova last created a handy script that completely automates creating release candidates and doing releases. So now stuff bombs out, and for love or money, the Maven release plugin will not listen to me when I say that I want it to check out from a tag and not from a branch. So I'll keep on negotiating with it. But hopefully, you know, as soon as I get past that, we'll be able to start kicking the tires on a release candidate for Drill 120. So unless I really am bested by a stupid build tool, that should be today or tomorrow by the time I sort it out. Yeah, so that's a little bit of good news. I'm not sure if I don't really have any other major announcements. You may have seen, I put Lua Tong's slides up and a little blog post to accompany them. So anybody who missed those can go find them on the Drill website. And yeah, I think that's kind of the announcements from me that I can think of. Charles, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to bring up before we go straight over to Mohamed, and then Mohamed, after you've done, we can then switch over to, you know, I guess what comes after Drill 120. Because there's a ton of stuff, you know, there's a ton of stuff we're still merging right now. Stuff coming from Paul, and then also a little bit more thinking about what we have yet to merge. Oh yeah, I've just got a funny little anecdote that I don't know, you may or may not find this amusing. I can't remember what I was working on at the time. I think I was investigating. We needed to do some middleware. We wanted to do some conversion, some writing out of Parquet or something. And I was looking at the different libraries and trying to see if there's something friendlier than good old Apache Parquet for the person to use from Java. And I thought maybe go and have a look at where Arrow's at. And I was browsing around and eventually got led to a ticket that got opened on the Dremio page where somebody said there was an official claim made that I would be able to transfer data from a server to my client if I switch from JDBC to Arrow Flight, which is the sort of network variant of Arrow format. It would be 100x to 1000x faster, which is like an eye-watering speed up. It looked like in practice when the guy benchmarked it, it was about 0.9. So that's quite amusing. It just goes to show these things are kind of subtle, and it's easy to get sucked into, I guess, stated claims. But what happens in the real world when you're actually using something may be quite different, and it's going to be important for us when we start doing design decisions, I guess, architectural and design type stuff after 120. Okay, let's bench that. And I'm going to hand, Mohamed, if you're ready, I'm going to hand over to you, and then please go ahead, share screen if you'd like to. Let me know if you need any more permissions from me. Oh, sorry, I do have one last announcement, which is it does look like I finally got the screen recording right. I think I got a notice popping up. So I'll make sure we can all access the resulting video file, and people can catch up on these sessions after the fact as well. Okie dokes. I can see two Mohammeds now. Okay, I'm gonna go on to mute. Mohamed, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll just do a screen share. Yeah, so I'll just take through you a few screens and I'll start you right away with the demo. So I have built a small kind of a automation script which basically automates the Apache Drill installation and the quite of setup, which is indeed kind of time consuming in case of doing it on a manual way. But initially we were using dataproc on GCP, so we had to do this on a regular basis, and we cannot use this drill 24/7 as a part of our POC, and we need to kind of have to spin up this n number of times as our dev team needs it. So we quite often have had to do this all kind of a manual work on our dataproc. So we came up with this script, and this made us possible to, whenever we want a drill, we can have it with just no need of doing kind of doing installation, download package, and all those things. We can just spin up this, and it's going to be get ready within 5 minutes. So this is what I'm going to do this on GCP dataproc. That is what we use, and I'm a DBA working as a DBA in Cloud One. This is what I'm going to show. How do you do this? Doing all the installation process in a kind of a script way. So first question comes is that why do we need this? So as I said that I went through a lot of mistakes, and when doing this drill on a multi-node cluster, so I kind of a 3 to anywhere between 5. Doing this on a regular basis is kind of a headache, and I end up into regular issues. So I came, and so that I completely want to avoid this kind of doing manual way, and I came up with a script which does this job. And coming up to this thing, why do we need this dataproc? So it has a lot of benefit on our side, on our organization, that it is a kind of a GCP is out of the box Hadoop setup. So it has everything whatever we need, either way that we want to run drill on a distributed way or on a yarn. So it provides everything to us. So that is why we need. So this is what, like, I'm just to avoid the mistakes and just get rid of those things, I built this whole script, which actually basically works very well. And that's all. Let me just hop into the right away to the demo. So this is what I have built up, kind of a script, kind of a drill setup where I configured each and everything, whatever I want, starting from the drill version, connectors, harmonating, whatever I want at the start of setup. So I did all the setup from end to end. And as well as coming to the part of Zookeeper, I really need Zookeeper on a distributed mode. So I came up with this script, like this is kind of a simple script which does all those jobs. And I came up with a script, and everything on the dataproc, we just need to go and create those things. Instead of doing all those things, I just use the GCP's REST API version of that code, and I just refactor it to my comfort mode. And here is a code which I'll show you by running it. And to run on dataproc, we need to have these scripts anywhere in any one of the bucket. So here is what I have stored, all the drill related things. I have stored these what is it? This is a demo bucket which I created it. So inside this, I do have both of these scripts, Zookeeper and drill related scripts over here. And I do have a file where I'll just run some kind of query and show you that drill is actually working. So I have already pushed it to my bucket, the same 2 files over here, which I have. And plus this is the automation.sh script, which we can run it from here. And for the sake of demo, I have did a change. The thing is that usually in the drill, we used to pull it from the Apache drill repository, right? So what I have done is that instead of pulling it from Apache drill itself, I am pulling it from my bucket. as that is what is considered as a best practices in the organization, that they don't allow any outbound access to pull anything from out of from the internet. So as a part of best practices also, that we consider to pull it from our what do you say, from a bucket instead of pulling it from the Apache website. So that is what the change what I have done for the sake of demo, so that it will just spin up within 5 minutes. So let me just run the script and just show it. So this is the dataproc in the GCP, and in a couple of minutes that will get spinned up. It will take a minute. Yeah, so this is what is getting spinned up. In this, I do have a 2-node cluster, sorry, 3-node cluster, which is basically 1 master and 2 worker. But coming to drill, it doesn't, we don't have a concept of master slave. So that drill bit is running on all the 3 nodes, and we can basically request to any node and get the in whatever request query whatever we want. So let it just come up. So you can literally see that in the face of just doing it in this way, we have to create a VM, we have to download all the packages into all those 3 VMs and do all those stuff manually. But in the sake of this, I have just copied those 2 scripts to my bucket, and here go, I just ran this thing, and it's just everything is getting automated. So if you see here, this is what is actually happening behind the scene on the dataproc. It just creates a metadata over here, and you see on the initial part, on each node, all the dependencies are getting installed. What do you say? Sorry. Yeah, on each node, all the dependencies are getting installed by itself, which is by the initialization action which Google provides. So using that initialization action, we are just using those scripts which we created it. Which I created it, and I'm just bringing it up. Basically, that's the option given by the GCP, and I'm just utilizing the initialization action for the drill setup. Just give around 4 minutes. I think within that amount of time, everything should be ready.
Very cool script. While we're waiting for it to come up, there is a trick in drill that might be useful in this context. I noticed you were symlinking the drill conf directory to some location. There's actually a flag when launching drill that lets you point to the configuration directory, and that allows you to completely separate the drill code, which you're going to install over and over again, from the configs, which should be sort of set up once to your liking, and then you just copy them. And that in anything other than playing around, that tends to make things easier, so you don't have to keep copying things to or from the drill directory. I know a lot of people do that, but it's kind of an unnecessary step. If you check out the drill launch flags, you'll see that there's one, I forget, it's like dash site or dash conf that will let you say where the configuration directory is. And then any UDFs or any other custom libraries that you have can also be in that directory, so that you have a clean separation between the drill code, which you want to upgrade from time to time, and your configurations. And then you should be able to take those same configurations and use them on every node, because there's nothing node specific about the configs. You do have to, in Zookeeper, identify where the Zookeeper is and configure that. But for all the drill bits, they all point to the same Zookeepers.
Yeah, so basically, I think that is what is also actually happening over here on the drill action. Drill installation action basically runs those things on all the nodes by itself. So like it's kind of I mean, it will just install on all nodes by itself. We don't have to just maintain, I mean, do have any connection between any node, but the only thing common between them, it will be just as a zookeeper. And other than that, all the files related thing, it will keep it separately on each node. Like if you have, as you can see here, that there are 3 nodes over here, right? So the 3 same nodes, all related files, it's actually creating in the background, and each node will have its own configuration file. And I think it came up. Yeah, let me just grab any one of the IP and show it. Yeah, so as you can see, drill is up around within 4 minutes, and we just run some sample query. Yeah, so here go that we just did all the setup in a couple of minutes without doing any kind of manual steps actually required. So that is what it is. I mean, that's the demo.
Cool.
Questions like?
Have you considered using Docker containers and launching it that way? Because that way you can build the image once and then just deploy it as many times as you like.
Yeah, but we have right now haven't decided to use anything with the Docker, but we have just planned to go with dataproc, which is actually basically easy for us to maintain this stuff, and it is simple for our SaaS team also to just work around these things, so that we just have one script. We just have to give minimal access to the required team, and they can just maintain these things easily. So that is what was comfortable for us. So I just came up with the idea, why not it is easy for us, why not this everyone just use it, this just whoever is actually using GCP.
Yeah, this is great. How did you, Mohamed, I think we discussed quite a lot being able to query GCP buckets. I'm not sure the exact name. How did it turn out in the end? Did you find that the performance was okay and that it works reliably?
Performance kind of a thing. Issue was that our query, I mean, our upstream was having a high, yes, as we discussed, right? It has kind of a really high kind of steaming time. Like it, for every 10 seconds, it was throwing a new file inside that, and each time drill had to like kind of had to again go and get the metadata of the target file and store it, and it actually, I mean, quite took some time. So it is what it is. So then now we have changed our use case to kind of a different one. Instead of querying it for each 1 minute or each 30 seconds, we have gone through, like, we'll query around anywhere between the first time between 5 minutes to between 2 minutes. So we are on a phase of yet implementing that in our environment. So yeah, it's still on. So we haven't yet, it's completely not working, but it would be anywhere finalized between in a month.
Okay, yeah, that's you're not alone with this small files problem, where a whole ton of files, small files, you know, it affects whether you use HDFS or these object storage, these cloud object stores. It's a factor. And I mean, in my experience, the cloud object stores are a good deal slower than a well-provisioned HDFS cluster. You've got to run sort of background tasks that do compaction. I think it's often called compaction. That go and pack these thousands of little files that have arrived into good, decent sized Parquet files. You kind of got to run a background housekeeping job. to make things work well. And there are also tricks with directory names and including directory names in where clauses with drill that can help it to avoid having to scrutinize 1,000 tiny files to decide if any of them contains even just one record of interest. Is a common problem.
Yeah, and moreover, I also came up with a solution that our upstream also started sending data around anywhere between each hour. It was creating a by hour folder. So instead of scanning all the file on a whole day, it started scanning only maximum of 60 files. Now we have even reduced 50 files to around even lower than that. So previously the problem more was that it was scanning the whole directory again and again. So we reduced it to somewhere around again to we pushed it upstream to make a specific directory per hour folder. So that it significantly reduces the amount of query which it actually scans. For example, no one actually ran anything on the tar, then drill doesn't need to run any query on that. So somewhere around we are trying to match up the level and make drill to our fit. So still in the process, as I said, hoping that it fits our environment, and we are almost to make it make the setup ready for our staging.
Oh, really great. Yeah, thank you for showing this to us.
May I have a question?
Yeah.
What if I would like to extend the cluster, the number of nodes, how it would work?
Simple. You can go here, change the node. That's line number 3.
Okay, and what exactly would happen? Would all nodes would be completely redeployed, or just one new node would be added into the cluster and existing nodes would be still running?
No. For example, there are 2 ways, right? So instead, like on the provisioning itself, you want, for example, you need 50 nodes, okay, 50 workers basically. You can just put the number at 50. So by default, you have so by default you can just pin up any number of by just giving this kind of a number over here. And second thing is that what if you had deployed with 10 nodes, now you need 20 nodes. So that in GCP there is a kind of a way that you can just I need to just grab that command. So you can just update those dataproc on the run. You can just increase the number of nodes and those things are going to get increased. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Basically, it will clone the disk. It will just clone the disk, nothing else much. Because in my use case, I'm using all my data on GCP. So nothing relies on HDFS or anywhere around that. So I can just increase it and I can still do all. And another, that was a nice question. I'll extend up another part. What if that you have a zookeeper somewhere else and you don't want to maintain zookeeper and dataproc? You just want your drill to be run. Yes, you can remove zookeeper and just given wherever your host name is there, and it's still gonna work. Any more questions?
I plan to do the same for AWS.
On EMR, right?
Yep. Yep.
Did you, Mohamed, I think Vitaly was asking if you were going to create a similar script for, I guess, EC2 or Fargate or one of the AWS products.
Yeah, just interested. Have you ideas to do the same there?
Yeah. We do have our customers on AWS. So once our SaaS platform is ready with GCP, we are we're still gonna like extend the support on yeah, I mean AWS EMR also. Our customers are there on AWS, so I'm still gonna make this script for our customers, and I'll again contribute to the drill with the same kind of a documentation, and so that anyone who uses GCP, they can no need to go and deal with all those things. They can just use dataproc. Anyone who use AWS, they can just run this same kind of a script, which I'll prepare on upcoming days. Then they can just run those scripts and just use it. But I haven't still started the work on it, but I'll start it once our environment gets stable. Not only on AWS, I'll be extending it to also on the Azure also. So on our plan is to do that on all 3 environments: AWS, GCP, and Azure.
Oh.
Yeah, I find this it's quite interesting, this question of virtualizing or making drill elastically deployable like this, because it isn't entirely obvious to me, because you've got I mean the one answer is you should use Kubernetes for anything like this, but Kubernetes, I mean, I don't know it well, but it looks like it's converging on a re-implementation of most of Unix, like the kind of abstracted file system, network, compute, just about everything. And obviously you've got to do that if you want to create a single kind of logical computer that sits on top of a whole horde of different physical machines, and you can run any kind of container in it. You've got this really heterogeneous workload. But drill is not heterogeneous, it's really homogeneous. It's every drill bit is the same as any other one. So I sometimes wonder if Kubernetes may be overkill for drill, and something simpler, that can just scale up and down, adding identical copies of the same thing is sufficient.
And moreover, on this same kind of dataproc or EMR, all these environments managed system support auto scaling. So you can just attach a auto scaling policy over there, and that's gonna work. So they do have just kind of a thing, but we need to create those policies according to our needs.
So in drill, there's some tricky bits. So on James, you were talking about using something other than Kubernetes, and back in the day when Hadoop was still a thing, we did develop a drill on Yarn thing that would launch it under Yarn, which was sort of the clunky resource manager of the day back then. And the big limitation when you're doing auto scaling is that you have to give drill a chance to shut down gracefully, or all in-flight queries will die. So after drill on Yarn, there was a feature added that does allow a drill bit to gracefully shut down. Basically, it declines to take any new queries, but will continue finishing up the existing queries. And when it's done, it'll shut down. So any cluster manager has to, in addition to just going and killing the drill bit, which will not end well, it has to send this message to initiate graceful shutdown. And when the drill bit then transitions to the quiescent state, then it's okay to go ahead and shut it down. But once you do that, it's pretty easy to make drill elastic, assuming you have the cluster controller. What people like about Kubernetes is that if you're not just running drill, but you're also running Yarn and Spark and a bazillion other tools of your own devising, Kubernetes is a uniform environment for everything. You don't have to build separate scripts for everything. I have worked at companies that have homegrown everything, and that itself, the management of the instances becomes its own huge project, because everything is special. So you either write it yourself or you pay the cost of having Kubernetes having written it for you. And Kubernetes is not a simple beast. It is one complex monster. But at scale, I think there's some advantages. But for this, Mohamed, the scale you're at, I think your scripts probably will serve you pretty well, because it sounds like your needs are at this stage are pretty simple and the script is pretty simple. So you've kind of matched the script to your needs, which is nice. It's nice the drill is flexible enough that you can do that.
Yeah, but as you said, Paul, Kubernetes is kind of quite complex. I have dealt with it around more than 2+ years around Kubernetes only. So I have around bunch of databases which I have dealt with completely on Kubernetes. People use their whole databases all on Kubernetes. So I have dealt with it. It's kind of quite tricky when it comes to that. And we are also planning to kind of create something on Kubernetes, but right now, like, we are just want to focus to make these things streamlined. So once those things are done, I think we are eventually will be focusing on kind of building some kind of Helm chart. I think one person has already built it. I think James pointed me to one, but those are not well maintained. That's a kind of a complicated thing which I felt initially, and I don't want to kind of on initial phase of when I started using Drill, I don't want to deal with those things. So eventually at least one is fixed, then I'll go around with I will be surely visiting the Drill on Kubernetes basically. I think that's a good point that gracefully shut down. That quite helps. We'll see what we can do on that when we visit on Kubernetes.
Well, if I may to recommend something, because our company went this way, this exact way. We started with private cloud and many virtual machines and ended up with Kubernetes. And for stateful clustered applications like Drill or clustered databases like Vertica, the best approach is to implement our own Kubernetes operator. And there is operator SDK you can utilize either in Go language or in Python. And it's quite easy to write our own operators. And then you can control whole cluster and its integration with other applications very easily. And it's easy to maintain then this thing. So I would start here because simple Helm chart is okay, but for more complex scenarios, like for example, zero downtime scaling, you may need something like operator.
Yeah, I agree with that. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be something. This is a completely facetious almost point, but anything that can get me away from the YAML and back to a real programming language counts for something. I don't understand why just because something is like declarative or in a config language these days, that must be much better than the previous way of doing it, where we used imperative general purpose languages that actually work quite well. But it just seems to be in fashion now.
Well, it always has been. I mean, for the folks that do this stuff, they're more comfortable with configuration than programming. Although when I was doing the Helm charts, it is using Golang's templating language, and you can actually start squeezing some code in there when you need to. You need to replicate this particular entry 5 times, right? It's and sometimes it's 4 times, and sometimes it's 3 times. You end up using their, some of the programming scripts, and you end up using, that as a meta language for what you're really trying to do. But I agree that in the end, it probably would be easier just to write a darn operator and be done with it. Be nice to take the drill on yarn stuff, get rid of all the yarn stuff, pull out the essence of the cluster controller that's in there, and then write an operator around that, so we can have a modern cluster controller. Obviously the drill on yarns is written in Java, so but the concepts of what it takes to watch drill bits, see when they die, replace them, and all that could easily be ported over to Go and create an operator. That would be a good weekend project for somebody who's sitting around bored and has access to a Kubernetes cluster.
In all clouds.
Yes, exactly. So anybody that just happens to have that lying around, yeah.
Just use Minikube.
Yeah, personally,
Minikube.
Personally, I wrote only one operator for vertical cluster. So I have some experiences, but not deep experiences yet. So, but it's easy to write it, especially in Python. The Golang is quite complex. I mean SDK, but there is Python SDK named COP from Zalando company, and it's very easy to use and onboard. So it's great.
Python's good like that. Definitely get something right. Yeah, that sounds like a great project. And actually, Mohamed, if you do return to the Helm charts that were developed by Abhishek for Drill, he's sometimes around in this meetup, and some of his team, I think, are sometimes here. So I think Maxime, who's here, might be in his team. So you might be able to, get in touch with people who have quite a lot of knowledge about it if you do decide to dust it off, or any of us decides to dust it off.
Yeah, I get it. I think Abhishek also reached out. I pinged him, so he answered in the same thread. I think you're also on this thread, I think. So he cleared apart a few things but we need to try it out. That is what it is. So I think on quite coming days we might get on that work also. But right now our client's on the VM, so they are trying to focus to make this thing run on the VM and make it simple for whoever is using on virtual machines, basically. So then once that is done, then we'll focus on Kubernetes thing. Because drill itself is actually simple, so I don't want to make something complex and go around those things. So once things are simple, then it's easy to take away from there.
Oh yeah, so much to be said for simplicity, man. That was great. Okay, well, I don't know if anybody has any more thoughts on the deployment subject, or if anybody would like to put down maybe another topic. Just jump in if you'd like to, if you've got anything on your mind.
So one of the things oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I mean, just wanna thank a person who actually helped a lot when trying to get started with drill. I think I don't see the person in the meet, but that is Lohi. You know about him, right? Lohi.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Luak?
Luak, yes.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's a kind of he really helped a lot, basically. So just want to thank him if he's here, because getting started was really complex. He really gave his kind of spend some time on giving some replies. So I really appreciate that part. So without it, it wouldn't have really possible. So I really thank him on that, on spending those times on giving replies on the threads and all those things. That's all from my side.
Thanks, Mohamed. Yeah, he's great with the community. He really is a champion. Okay, and then who else? Somebody else was speaking around about the same time. Paul, was it you?
Yeah, I was just going to bring up our favorite topic of date time support. And I think, as we're moving forward in thinking about the next release, I think at some point we probably ought to give some attention to that, because I think it's right now in a very awkward state where some of the code thinks that drill is in whatever time zone. Others of the code think it's in UTC. And as a result, tests only work if you happen to be lucky enough to be living in London. Otherwise, your machine has to live in London because it only works in UTC. And the problem with that is that it looks like when you run the test that way, it looks like things are working, but anybody else who tries to do it is going to get odd results. I think that could be a real discouragement for people using Drill if they are working with date times and they're getting answers that don't make sense to them. No, they'll assume that they don't understand something and that Drill is really hard, and that maybe something else might be simpler because they can't figure this date thing out. And it's only because we're schizophrenic. So it's going to be disruptive because if you figured out a path that kind of works now and we change something, it's probably going to not work. So that's why we'd probably end up having to have a new data type, but just deprecate the old ones. But that's going to be work. I'm afraid that if we don't do that work, we're just on this sort of dicey situation where as long as you don't use dates, everything works. But if you use dates seriously, which some people tend to do, you are going to get yourself into a hole. And there's one test that really illustrates that. It reads from Parquet and writes to JSON, then reads JSON, writes to Parquet. And your answer will be twice your offset from UTC. And so it only works in UTC where the offset's 0. So 2 times 0 is 0 and it works. Anyway, just bringing that up as an issue that we really need to address at some point. And I'm not sure it's going to be optional for much longer to have this dicey date support. It's the key thing that's really screwed me up in trying to do that. EDF v2, I can't even run the builds locally because they don't work. The tests don't work because I'm not in UTC. So I'm having to rely on GitHub to do all the builds for me. So anyway, just making my pitch that we ought to fix that.
Just move to London, Paul.
Sure yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's we have relatives there. We'll just go and visit every time I need to do a drill PR.
There you go. Problem solved.
Yeah.
I got a feeling we might slow down a little bit if you've got to fly before you can test your code. I don't know when this situation started. Like I think we've had locale and time zone related problems in our unit tests since before I even started working with the code. I think I remember letting the tests run locally the first time I cloned Drill, and it bombed. I think a little bit before that on the decimal place literal character being in my locale, it's comma and not period, or the other way around. I actually don't even know what it is, but it's flaky and it's completely wrong. I mean, the decimal place thing is I think less serious, but the time zone thing is like crazy. We can't have it like this.
Yeah, and I remember back in the day, when we were all at MapR, the discussion, even then, folks that were in the database business couldn't agree because they were looking at Oracle, which was obviously created before there was ever, UTC as a concern. And the argument was that dates are always local. And if your local is UTC, that's fine. But then the problem is you're reading something like Parquet, which is UTC, and therefore your local is UTC. Your local is whatever the data is that you read. But then you have functions like age, which take the current time on your machine and compare it to your data. And you don't want a different age for the same date depending on odd factors. So that then said, well, we got to pick a time zone. So since Drill has no time zone, the time zone is local. Well, then that makes age work, but then Parquet UTC stops working. Drill, I mean, JSON has no standard for date, but the Mongo extended types do. Those dates are in UTC. So if you just write a string to JSON, you're fine because JSON doesn't define what it is. But when you have the extended types, it has to be UTC, which means you have to figure out how to convert what you have, which you don't know what the time zone is, into UTC. And then you start waving your hands and start getting desperate and say, oh, wait, hey, look, there's a crash over there. I think I'll go fix that instead. But it does need to be sorted out. one way or the other. And we fudged it for years at MapR. You know, just you go look at support and say, "God, can't you guys even figure out dates?" But it really was that it was schizophrenic. So it isn't just, you know, it isn't new. I think what's new is that the tests are starting to test cross format functionality, and the only way people could make that work is to run in UTC. So now the tests can't run in any time zone except that. So as long as we were looking at any one format, it kind of works. But as soon as you do two formats, or that person who very helpfully contributed correcting the age function, that's also a forcing function that, you know, now we have to know what those dates actually mean. So so, you know, it's always been a problem. It's just now becoming more of a problem as we start combining formats, which should have been a problem earlier because Drill can do joins, but somehow we managed to fudge it.
It's crazy to think it's been there for, I think, probably many years. And then, like, if you think of ways to run a project like this, I mean, one way is to leave this broken timestamp as it is and make a new healthy timestamp. Or another way is to take say drill 2 is coming, we're going to take a wrecking ball to the existing timestamp, and we won't keep it around. Like, we're going to completely replace timestamp. So I don't know which one is smarter, to add a working one and keep a broken one kind of around, or to just level the one that's there when there's an opportunity to break compatibility.
Well, it's going to break compatibility. So the you know, the question is how you handle that. Historically, there's lots and lots of stuff in Drill that's there to maintain backward compatibility. If you ever look at Parquet's date time support, you'll see that there's code in there that deliberately works around bugs in an early version of Drill where they were doing the date time wrong. And so it will check to see the version of your metadata. And if the metadata was written by, I don't know, it was Drill 1.5 or earlier, it'll do things one way, otherwise it'll do things a different way. I don't know whether there's anybody who still has data written from that early version of Drill, whatever early version that was. But anybody who's found a workaround to kind of make it work, you know, that workaround may no longer work. So, but if we are going to do a 2.0 and say, hey, some old stuff is being removed, you may have to do some recertification. I mean, some people will stay on the older Drill, but at least for the future, it'll be consistent. So either way will work. We do need both a UTC and a unspecified, you know, date time. That's the traditional way that databases handle it. And then you're, you know, the date time, you don't know what the time zone is. You'll apply it when you want to do something. And UTC is, you absolutely know what it is. And when you put data into it, you've got to convert it to UTC from whatever it's in. And that seems to be a sane way to do things. Drill, there's code actually in Drill that talks about having a timestamp, which is time plus offset, which seems overkill because you're never going to mix that within a single column. I haven't seen use cases where that occurs. So that's probably too general. All your data is in one time zone, or it's another time zone, or you just can't make sense of it. I mean, you can parse a string that has that, but if you can parse the string and it's got an offset, you can convert it to UTC. Anyway, this is a really complicated area. There's been lots of proposals we can dredge up, just raising the issue.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing it up. I've seen data types in some databases where it is timestamp plus time zone information. And I don't know, those databases might even be smart enough to understand which time zones have daylight saving and which don't. But I don't know that we'd ever want to get into providing that sort of stuff. And the conversions, like if I convert from South African time to Pacific time, the database engine like offers that and works out the daylight saving thing. And I just don't know if we want to have a data type like that.
We actually do. Anytime that's trying to convert to or from UTC already has to deal with that. Yeah, we don't do it, right? Java time does it for us.
Okay.
So there's a library that handles all that stuff. Now Java time evolved from Joda, and time is complicated, but they managed to make it slightly more complicated through the API. I found that, I forget which direction it is, converting from one direction to the other, you can kind of, they want you to create objects, which in a high-speed query engine will create a lot of exhaust that we don't want. You'd like to do it just with numbers. And there's a path that you can kind of do that from the direction of one to another. I think you can convert from UTC to your local time fairly easily. But going from local time to UTC is harder because of the time zone. There's a dual mapping, right? Sometimes there are holes, and then sometimes the same time matches local time maps to two local times mapped to the same UTC time. So you can't just do a number. You have to know kind of the time locally and what the offset was at that time, and then unapply that offset, which is, I can't find an easy way to do that in Java time. But we will have to sort all that out. Hopefully we'll find somebody who knows Java time and we'll say, oh yeah, you just use the such and such function. But we don't have to do it, right? Java time will do it for us. We just have to hold the data that Java time needs.
Right. Okay. And there wouldn't be a data type that, like a zoned timestamp data type, where it stores both the timestamp and a time zone offset, or
We could.
because some databases do have that.
Yeah, there is and if you look at the code that generates the value vector code, there are actually references in there to a zoned timestamp. So the idea was that it would have, I don't know how they had it laid out. I think it was a long for the the number of milliseconds, and then another additional field for the time zone offset. And it was never actually used. I think the type is in the list of drill types, but it was never implemented. But it could be, right, if we chose to go that way.
Okay. It's actually going to be interesting to sort of lay out a plan for how to, there's a lot of timestamp related code. I mean, it's in the functions layer, it's in the readers. Various readers have code that does stuff to timestamps. I guess it might be in the vectors, I'm not sure.
Oh yeah,
Probably
it's
not.
everywhere. It's
it
from
is.
top to
Yeah.
bottom. I mean, you need
Yeah.
some place to
Yeah.
store it, right? And the drill type, whatever we do with the types, you first have to define a type, then you have a vector to hold that type. Then you have the calcite functions that know how to convert those types. Then you have all of the functions that have to be generated that are supposed to work on date time types. And then there's probably a bunch of other code that has to change. So it's a non-trivial project. The last time anything like this was done was when a very energetic gentleman contributed the current var decimal type to drill. And so, that added a new type from top to bottom. And, he was able to do it in a reasonable amount of time. Somehow he was able to get in and wrap his brain around all those things, but he was like a decimal expert, so he knew exactly what to do. So we need a time expert who can help with that, and then somebody who can help with all those layers of drill. Most of it's just copy paste, right? We already have templates for everything. It's just adding that new type to the template. New vector accessors and all that. But most of it's fairly routine. Anyway, we don't have to design it here. Just raising that as something we ought to address.
I concur with Paul. I wonder if once we get this release out, we should maybe break this up into kind of like a series of pull requests and kind of proceed with that incrementally, because I mean, it seems logical to kind of add the type maybe, but I could see some breakpoints where we could kind of add pieces of it without breaking things, and then kind of once all the pieces are there and we're convinced they're working, then we can break stuff and, you know, make it accessible or however, you know, really deploy it. But I could definitely, I mean, it to me, it does seem like the right way to go is to have the naive times and the timestamp, the date, the time zone aware timestamps. So, yeah.
Yeah. Something else that makes testing and building locally more painful than maybe it could be is our big monolithic drill that's got tons of plugins, a growing number of plugins. So one thing that like I'm just as kind of interested in, I guess, as the timestamps is trying to take contrib and split it. I don't know if it goes into the individual like GitHub repos where like if I made, let's say I did the fixed width format, if I developed that, it would be in my personal GitHub repo that thing started living, or if it would be just in a separate drill contrib repo, but it would be that we're just getting such a massive kind of effective POM or dependency tree from all the POM files. It's quite wild. And we've got tricks to, you know, to like shade things. And if you get on the wrong side of it, it's quite intimidating. I mean, like as a newcomer, if you add something new, you could be faced with some dependency hell that will make you run away almost, I feel.
So I think
James?
go ahead, Charles.
I was gonna say we're at time, but I think we should. I have a thought on this, but I think maybe we should table that for the next hangout, and that can be like our #1 agenda item for that. I don't know how I know we discussed the idea of a marketplace, but I'm drawing a blank at the tool that I saw this, but basically one of the tools that I've used that, you know, in the time basically would let you build with additional plugins. So like the code's there, it's sitting there, but the default build doesn't build with all these, with various extensions. And then if you want the extensions, you like add an option when you build it to like with, I don't know, whatever. So just as a thought, because then you can pare that down if you just want a quick build, or if you want more, you can get more.
So you can do that in Maven with a profile.
Yeah.
But the problem is to release the, you know, to make sure your code works as a developer, you'd have to build everything that's in drill, right? And GitHub has to. Some projects, instead of, you know, drill is a single repo with a single project. Some, you know, the drill account could have multiple repos. If you look at Parquet, for example, they've got a bunch of different repos for different tasks. So one's the Hadoop thing, one's the core, one's the spec. We could do that and have these things be off to the side. But the dynamic aspect of dependencies is going to kill us at some point. We probably have to do class loader isolation, but that's a whole big topic by itself. So we ought to, as Charles suggests, we ought to probably have a session on that, and then start plotting out, you know, these big moves of the timestamp stuff, the plugin strategy, and figure out how over time we're going to do that, because it'll be more than a single pull request. It'll take some thought, and we'll need to sort it all out.
That it does seem like, oh, hang on, someone's at my door. Okay, hang on 1 second. I will be right back, and then we'll close it up. Sorry, 1 second. All right, they're in. Okay. Yeah. I was curious also how Presto handles the situation, just because they seem to, I mean, I would suspect they kind of have a similar situation, that there's lots of plugins, and I've read the documentation. It seems like you have to add some stuff to it to, like, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but we could look at that. Although, as we heard, I think from who was it? I don't remember who said this last week or last hangout, that, you know, you can't add to Presto once you've started it, so you have to restart every time you do that. So putting that out there as well. Anyway,
that's also true of drill, by the way. I don't think it will find a jar that you just happen to drop into a running drill.
Right.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
case of drill, sorry for interruption, it's possible to use dynamic UDFs feature, so it works only for UDFs for now, but it's possible to
Yeah, for UDFs, that's
extend.
true. Yeah, but for format plugins, it probably is.
Yeah.
I think that it finds those during startup, because there'd be horrible race conditions if it finds it at execution time.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, all that we
All
can
right.
discuss later.
James pinged me and lost his internet connection, so asked me to kind of wrap things up. So again, thank you everybody for attending another good session. Our next one will be 1 month plus now, so looking forward to that. And so yeah, let's put this on the agenda for next time. And I guess also we should wish James good luck on cutting the release. So which should be done today or Monday or something like that. So yeah, all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend, and see you in a month.
Ciao. See ya.
See
Take
you.
care. Bye.